I ended up working with the likes of Bob Mabena on his breakfast show.
Oh, yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, I worked with Moji on his afternoon drive show. Traditionally, we would see a lot more 21 kilometers, and there used to be some 25s, which are no longer on the calendar nowadays. There used to be the Bobby's 25 kilometer. The idea was that January, you do your 21s, you do a 25. Then you start in February with some 32, so then lead up to marathon season. Now, marathon season was traditionally March-ish. Okay, so when we look at the South African road running calendar and being at this event with Gerda Steyn, it explains a lot. She is the reigning Comrades Marathon and 2 Oceans champion, as well as the record holder for both of these events. We just have so many South African men running under 28 minutes. Precious Mashele, 27:35. Maxime Chamaton, 27:36. Tabang Musia, Stephen Mukoka, 27:38 to tackle Glen Rose Xaba. In terms of South African marathon athletes, she is now head and shoulders above anyone. Tabang Musiako, those are the ones you're looking at, with Elroy Galant and Stephen Mukoka probably to focus a little bit more on running faster times at the 42-kilometer distance, not necessarily in South Africa, but maybe elsewhere in the world.
Welcome to this episode of the Runners Podcast with myself, Rotokholo, and today I am talking to a sports anchor, Mr. Mosibodi Whitehead. His head is not white. Oh, he's got grey hair, so his head is white indeed. And to you at home, like, subscribe, comment, and hope you enjoy this episode where we're going to be previewing the running calendar that just started this month. And welcome, Dr. Mosibodi.
And yes, they are those that call me Mushibudi. You sound more like Donald Matipa and Tate Tembisa Mile, who also calls me Mushibudi.
Just out of interest, you are an environmentalist and by profession, but you just like myself. I'm a chemist and I'm doing this media thing. How did this passion come about?
Well, I did. You're correct. I studied a BSc all those years ago, but I found that my interest always from the beginning, even from when I was a youngster, had been in sport. So I was one of those who try for every sports team: ball, tennis, cricket, athletics, cross country, those days before 1994. So I tried all the sports, and then after completing my degree, which was a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Science and Botany, I then was looking for work, and I ended up trying out for a job in a radio station because they had open auditions.
Yeah.
And then they called us all in, and we had to take this test to make sure that you understand all the sports in and out. Do you understand how to score golf? All the terminology. So I understood all of those things because even golf I had played a little bit in my matric year. So I had a good grasping of most of the sports. And then, as is our culture, we all grew up watching football, NSL, PSL, and so forth. So it became easy to do it as a full-time job, and also I got excellent training from my very first mentor, which was Jeff Muloi, and then I worked with Jeff Muloi, with Tabiso Musia, Simnigo Kabanisa. Those were the first people I worked with when I worked for Kaya FM.
And I knew you when you were at KFM. That's the first time I actually knew about Mosibodi Whitehead.
Yeah, so that's where I started, and then I did general sport. We did everything, and I started working on the weekends. I was doing like a kind of weekend afternoon where no one hears you, and then the World Cup came around, and they needed more people, and then I was Tabiso Musia's assistant in terms of producing the sports content. And cut a long story short, Tabiso Musia left, and I was left there at Kaya. and I ended up working with the likes of Bob Mapena on his breakfast show.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, I worked with Moji on his afternoon drive show, and then more recently I worked with Uskumba and Ndumiso and some wonderful presenters, David O'Sullivan. So that's where it comes from. Post-COVID then, athletics I will say has always been my first love, specifically middle distance, cross country, road running, and then even the field events, because I also did some jumps at school, high jump, and I love long jump. I just love watching the long jump. So when the 2020 came around and there was a big change in the world, in the economy, in the market, I decided that for once now I want to do this thing that I've always wanted to do, just like you. I want to tell these stories specifically of South African athletes, which I felt were not being done justice. And thanks to SuperSport, they gave us the opportunity. We started with the top runner, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and just something that will interest you. I was born on the 21st of July, and you were born on the 23rd. So I think there are no coincidences in life. Maybe that's why our passions are the same, and we are born in the same year for the record. But anyway, something that my first love is road running. I know you've got knowledge and expertise in track and field and so forth, but let's just be biased and talk about the road running, because we are here at the Gerda event, and Gerda did not do the track and field and stuff. She just straight went into road running, although she's a late bloomer, but yeah, she's a star, that or the star that she is. Today we are attending her event. Let's just preview the year ahead. In the first half, I know there are majors, which is Comrades, and the two oceans, which most of the road runners we are going to be working towards. And then the second half of the year, which we just came from, you've got your Cape Town Marathon, you've got your Soweto Marathon, and those 10-kilometer corporate events. Let's start with the first half of the year. What can we look up for in the marathon, in the ultras?
Okay, so when we look at the South African road running calendar and being at this event with Gerda Steyn, it explains a lot. She is the reigning Comrades Marathon and Two Oceans champion, as well as the record holder for both of these events. Now, our road running calendar has been historically skewed towards preparing people for Comrades.
Yeah.
So even Two Oceans began as a run for people to train for Comrades. You needed to run 56 kilometers. Back then it was Easter weekend, and you felt, okay, if you ran that well, then it's a good long run before Comrades. So Comrades has shaped it. So it means that from January, traditionally we would see a lot more 21 kilometers, and there used to be some 25s which are no longer on the calendar nowadays. There used to be the Bobby's 25 kilometer, for example. One still exists in KZN. There is the PDAC 25 kilometer, which is at the end of January traditionally. Yes. Because the idea was that January you do your 21s, you do a 25. Then you start in February with some 32, so you see a lot of 32s.
Called 20 milers, yeah.
Correct, 20 miles. The Springs one, usually in February, you also have the Monster in Athletics Gauteng North.
And Tough One used to be in that.
Correct. So those ones then would lead up to marathon season. Now, marathon season was traditionally Marchish, end of February, Marchish, all the way to the 1st of May. That was marathon and ultra marathon season. So you'll see that the most of our marathons and ultras are in that bracket. Later we saw then the introduction of what they call early qualifiers, marathons coming in January. Like I think the biggest example in this part of the world is the Johnson Crane Marathon, was always the early qualifier that people said, listen, go and run the Johnson Crane, so that if you fail, then you can try again in March when there are lots of marathons. So that's the calendar that we see, and then increasingly then there's a split, because that was more for social runners and Comrades runners, but then we have also marathon specialists, people who don't run the ultra marathons, competitive athletes, some who run for the professional clubs, who specialize on 42 kilometers. And so then we saw the introduction of races such as more recently the Durban International Marathon, which takes place in beginning of May, and that has World Athletics points and is for people to try and qualify for major marathons around the world or even the World Championships. So that is not really targeted at the Comrades market, but it's an event where we might see one or two people who have got super fitness saying, let me just go and jog this one before Comrades. So that's kind of the calendar that we look at in terms of the marathons. It's always has been a system where it's about preparing you for Comrades. Then there are the specialist 10-kilometer events.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned them, the corporate ones, the ABSA Run Your City series. But before there was the ABSA Run Your City series, before there was the Hollywood, Joburg and Durban 10K, there was the Spa Grand Prix. That is possibly the precursor to all of them, because that one is now 30 plus years old.
Yes.
Where we've had, it firstly started, it used to be called Spa Ladies.
Yes, I know that with the name Spa Ladies.
Correct. Yeah. And then we, it was more about getting women active, for women to celebrate health and fitness, and then having those elite runners, like if we go back in time, Ilana Meyer ran and won. We had Shane Bosman when she was young Renee Kalmer. Closer to home, more recently in the early 2000s, we're talking the likes of Popi Mlambo, and then more recently the Palula twins, Mapaseka Makanya, have all run well in the Spa Grand Prix, and that is a specialist 10-kilometer event which allows track runners to migrate onto the road. So if you've been running 5,000 or 1,500, it's not so far that when you train you can run 10 kilometers on the road, but you can't jump straight to the marathon. Usually very few can. So that's where we've seen the likes of Spa, and then subsequent to that we've seen in particular the ABSA Run Your City series coming in, and that is a specialist 10-kilometer event involving mass participation, but it brought something we hadn't seen before. It brought the best athletes from around the world and around the continent to come and run right here in South Africa. So that's the key difference, because we've had world record holders, one of the Dibaba sisters, Genzebe Dibaba, we've had Yalemzef Yehaulu, we've had the guy Daniel Simu from Kenya, who was a silver medalist at the World Championships in the 10,000, all coming to run here. So that's a different event. That's specifically targeted at 10Ks, as is the Hollywood series, Joburg and Durban, and as well as the Spa Grand Prix. So that's kind of how the South African calendar is set up, where those ones are independent, but now is marathon season here from January all till Comrades. After Comrades it gets quiet, and then we start up again.
And I know in the second part of the year we've got the likes of Cape Town Marathon now, which wants to be recognized or put into the majors, or they're trying to contend to be one of the majors. And you had Soweto Marathons, which we term as road runners, we term them early qualifiers now.
Correct. I mean, you're spot on. So I mean, we've given you the backgrounds, and after Comrades, then it's quiet. Those days, you would rest even for 2 months. You said, sharp.
That's what I used to do. I used to rest for 2 months. Yeah.
You start running again maybe in August, early August, maybe late July, and plus it's cold up here, so people don't run. And then you start training again. Usually, for back then, city to city used to be in September.
Oh yes, I forgot about city to city ultra.
City to city, and then after city to city, you'll do Soweto. Then Gauteng North, there's Jacaranda, which is traditionally in November, and the Soweto Marathon. Now those races, you're right, were also came into being to give you an early qualifier, but also so that people wouldn't lose their fitness. It's the same story as Tough One. If you run Tough One, back then you used to run Tough One at the end of November, you can rest the whole December, do nothing. Then 1st of January or 2nd of January you start training again, so that you start running your 21s, your budget, and that's how you follow.
You still have the muscle memory.
So Soweto was came onto the calendar in that vein, but the difference with Soweto, it was also an act of self-determination, because they weren't township marathons when Soweto started. There was no such thing as a township marathon that was run exclusively in any township, and that was the success of the Soweto Marathon, because people came from all over outside the township to come and experience a race ya kokasi. And since then we've had plenty others, but I think it is probably the jewel in terms of the crown of township races, and continues to be one of the very best in the country.
The iconic one, yeah. And then let's just talk about the names that we can expect in the first half and in the second half, because you don't have the same household names running the same type of events. So let's talk about the first half. In the marathons, on the ladies and on the men's, who can we look up for in the marathons and in ultras?
Okay. Women ultras, well, it will be the one that we are here to see today. It will take a lot to beat Gerda Steyn at Two Oceans and at the Comrades Marathon. I think if Yvette van Zyl is fit, maybe she can challenge her Hollywood Athletics Club teammate. She's the only one who can, I think, come close to Gerda at Two Oceans. But at Comrades, I mean, she won by what? Over 10 minutes last year.
Beating her own record.
She's the only woman to go under 6 hours for the up run. So she'll be very, very difficult to beat. I think it's going to be the Gerda Steyn show, and then the others will be fighting for the minor positions. So it'll be good to see the likes of Nobuhle Chuma. She's improved very well last year. We've already mentioned Yvette. Hollywood have got a very strong ultra marathon women's team. There's Kala Molinaro there. Loveness Madziva ran well at Two Oceans last year, finishing on the podium. So there are a few, and I think we will see the purple a lot on the women's podium in the ultras. In the men's ultras, there's only one club. It's going to be Nedbank. I'm sorry to say. People will say, yeah, Nedbank. But I mean, it's been absolutely unbelievable. It's been incredible, and I think it is something for which Nick Bester and his team must take credit. They have swept the podium at Comrades in the men's race for 3 years in succession. It's never been done before, and it is total, complete and utter dominance, and I don't see who will beat Viersma or Tete Dijana or Slender Motibi or Dan Machailwe. Yes, Mr. Price, Mokhutswaka, Martin Ngwenya, Max Elite have made some pretty good signings. They've got Joseph Manyedi joining them recently. So yeah, I think they will feature for sure. Datite Lomona Lesotho will be there somewhere in the top 10, but in terms of winning the race, I think it's going to be a Nedbank again to dominate, even at Two Oceans with the likes of Konkobe. At Two Oceans, we could see one or two Ntsiga runners featuring there, the likes of Givmo Mudziga Nyama on the podium, Nkoskona Mhlakwana on the podium. But
Nkoskona for Hollywood, I think it's Hollywood.
Yeah, it's Hollywood on the podium. But I think Nedbank, especially at Comrades, maybe less so at Two Oceans, but especially at Comrades, it's going to be very difficult to beat Nedbank.
Yeah, they are lethal. They've got a lethal team. And then on the marathon front, in the first half of the year, who can we look up for?
Yeah, the main race for the marathon in the first half of the year is the Durban International Marathon. That's where the speedsters will go. Last year, history was made. The first time ever in South Africa that we saw 3 South African men running under 2 hours 10 in the same race. Yeah. It was won by Elroy Galant. Matthews Leato was second, and Stephen Mokoka, the evergreen veteran, was third. So it will be the same thing again. I'm not sure we will see those two, Stephen and Elroy. I think perhaps other commitments might come about, but whatever happens, I think we shall see the usual sub 210 because it's also a gateway not only for South African runners but for African runners. Isaac Mpofu, he's now a 206 man. He started there. Tebelo Ramakongwana wa Lesotho, he's now a 206 man himself again, and he started there. So it's going to be a race, I think, the Durban International Marathon, where we want to see, hopefully, the fastest time ever run on South African soil. Maybe we can see a 207 if we get a really, really good field, because the weather's always good. Unlike the Cape Town Marathon, sometimes Sanlam Cape Town, where we get a little bit of wind in October. So May in Durban is excellent for marathon running, and if we get a quality field there, then I think we should see a fast time. In terms of our men, I'm not sure who's going to be running because, for example, Thabang Mosiako.
Yeah, I was just going to say, can I throw in a name in that head to say, I've seen Thabang Mosiako taking a giant leap from 10 and 21, going to marathon. So he's graduating into marathons. He did an international one and he ran well. So can we expect, I think we can expect to see him also at the Durban International. I don't know.
I'm not sure because I spoke to him and he says that for now he's running one marathon a year and he would prefer that it's overseas at the end of the year. So at the end of the year we've got Valencia,
I see.
Doha, and then in January there's Dubai, and I think that's probably where we'll see him, so that in the middle of the year he can focus on the half marathon, which is certainly his strength. So with the World Championships coming up next year and the World Road Running Championships where he's got a 59, remember he's got a 59.52 does Musiako, he will focus on that, and where the timing is around that middle of the year, the marathon would interfere with that. So I think we'll see him in the Absa Run Your City series running those fast 10Ks before running those half marathon races there.
On the ladies front, can we expect to see Glen Rose breaking the Durban International again? Like she has performed recently?
It would be amazing, but I don't know if we will see it because the timing of that race, there's a lot of things happening at that time of the year in terms of 10Ks, Spa and the Absa Run Your City series in particular, which she always participates in. So, I mean, I haven't spoken with her like I did with Thabang, but I would suggest, just from looking at it, that she's likely possibly to do the Spa and the Absa Run Your City series, and then again, at the end of the year, run another fast marathon. And because she's the defending champion, it's likely they will invite her to say, please come and defend your title at the Sanlam Cape Town Marathon, which would be wonderful to see, to witness. And then she will run one marathon a year and then focus more on the 10Ks, Lizzie 21.
So we can say maybe Musia, the female version to Musiako is it's Glen Rose. But then fast forward into the second half of the year, we've spoken already about Glen Rose saying in the second half of the year we can expect to see her going to defend her title at or her record at Sanlam Cape Town Marathon. So can we just on the second half we expect to see her? Are there any names that you think can come to challenge her on that one?
Well, it depends on the international field that they're able to assemble, specifically the East Africans that are brought to tackle Glen Rose Xaba. In terms of South African marathon athletes, she is now head and shoulders above anyone. Her 2:22 eclipses by 90 seconds the 2:24 and change that Gerda Steyn had run in terms of her national record. And I think at the moment Steyn is not in that sort of 42 kilometer form. That she was in when she ran that time in Valencia. She's in kind of better ultramarathon form with a lot of strength, but I'm not sure that if I said to her next week, please go and run 2:24, that she would. She's training up for the ultra marathon. So let's see what happens after Comrades. Maybe she recovers well, Gerda, and then we'll choose Cape Town. But she usually likes to run after Comrades a marathon in November or December. So in the past she's riding the New York Marathon and then obviously Valencia, and even last year she ran Valencia as well. So I'm not sure we'll see at Cape Town because she's only done it once before in the post-COVID era. So it will be Glen Rose against the rest, the East Africans, and then hopefully one or two improving South Africans can come number 8, 9 or 10 Nyana and fight to see if they can't break 2:30 or 2:35. It would be great to see more South African women
definitely
2:30 because we don't have so many.
That will be a breath of fresh air. And then but I've also seen Gerda after post Comrades. She goes to do the 10,000s and she does perform on the 10,000 surprisingly, because when you look at our elite men, for them competing in the 10 kilometers, it's not many of them that fare well in that department.
So I mean, I think in particular the Absa Run Your City series has raised the standard of 10-kilometer running in South Africa in the post-COVID era, because before, when you were a champ, if you ran 28:20 or 28:15, you've won a race. Now you can't. You can't. And we just have so many South African men running under 28 minutes. Precious Mashele, 27:35. Maxim Chamaton, 27:36. Tabang Musia, Stephen Mukoka, 27:38, even though he ran that some time ago. Tabang Musiako, 46. Elroy Khalan, 27:47. Kabelo Mulaudzi, 27:52. It goes on and on and on. So, and we've got the likes of Chris Mhlanga who are running 28:20-ish. We've got Nadil Vilskut who ran 28:06, I think it was, last year in Durban. So now we're at the stage where we've got 7 or 8 men that are breaking or close to breaking 28 minutes. The quality has improved, and it's really because of that Absa Run Your City series, but it's more importantly because of that Durban race where it's a fast, they bring the East Africans, so our guys are forced to chase them, and our guys are running really, really well. So I think this year, it's possible now that we could see an SA record this season, depending on the field that we see assembled in Durban.
Yeah.
Or the Hollywood Durban 10K, because that's also a very fast course. If you don't get a
it's at sea level. The oxygen is enough.
It's there. It
can go all your lungs out. Yeah.
You don't have these sharp turns and everything. So those two courses are extremely good for running fast times. And this year we'd hope to see an SA record. And if there's anyone who's going to run it, and I'm looking at form and abilities, Maxime Chamaton has got to be thrown in the hat there. Precious Mashele, if he gets the right race, depending on what he's preparing for, because over the years he has always maintained that his goal is ultimately to run the marathon when the time is right. And then Tabang Musiako, those are the ones you're looking at, with Elroy Khalant and Stephen Mukwaka probably to focus a little bit more on running faster times at the 42-kilometer distance, not necessarily in South Africa, but maybe elsewhere in the world.
But then I just wanted to talk about the young ones, like Chris Mhlanga, the upcoming Chris Mhlanga. I've seen the waterfall guy,
Bennett
Siloi as well. So I think those kind of guys, I think we will see a lot of them come into the fore or improving, because I've seen him. He's an aggressive runner, and I think the winds of change are upon us in our road running, in that category of running. I don't know what's your view on that.
And that's where, going back to where we started, that's where the calendar is so important and works well together, because now is track season. So we mentioned Glenrose. Glenrose builds her season traditionally like has always been done. This part of the year they will run track 800, 1500, 5,000 to improve your speed. She did that last year as well, so that when you start running the 10 kilometers on the road around March, April, you've got the leg speed. The similar thing we saw from Chris Mhlanga last year, who ran a very good 3,000 meters, which was won by Nadil Vilskut at the Cape Milers down in Cape Town at the University of the Western Cape. And they both then ran very well over 10 kilometers in Durban in July, after running good track in end of March, beginning of April. So that's how it feeds into each other. All these youngsters, as you say, with the winds of change blowing, that we are expecting to perform well in the middle of the year at those big 10-kilometer events, they now must run track, whether it's CGA, or their provinces, HN, they host good track meets, and then they will then transition to the road somewhere around March, April. The road running season starts, and then from there try and run well. Siloi, he's a little bit different because he's already started running marathons. He was top 20 at the Sanlam Cape Town Marathon last year. He's improved, represented South Africa at the World Cross Country Championships as well last year in Serbia. And this year, he will be running the Durban International Marathon. And let's see what he can do. In fact, not the Durban International Marathon, the SA Marathon Championships, which are happening at the Baldwin Sport Peninsula Marathon.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, in February, on the 16th of February.
And hopefully I'll be at that event, hopefully.
Hopefully we'll be there together, because that is now the first main marathon of the year. It's marathon champs, and people will be there running for their provinces. It's a good course. It's point to point. There is a little bit of wind sometimes.
At those mountains.
Yeah,
I mean,
mountains.
yeah.
But it's a beautiful course, and it's also one that can produce a good time. Last year it was won by Lloyd Bosman, who ended up on the podium at Two Oceans. And it's a race that people who run Two Oceans like, because the first 21 Ks of Two Oceans run along that
I see,
peninsula route. So let's see what that marathon brings, because that will also signal the start of the new year, and maybe we could have a new face as a marathon champion, maybe someone like a Bennett Siloy, or who knows.
Thank you for your time, Mosibodi, and hopefully after the ASA Awards we will make time and just preview the cross countries and the track and field, just because the season will be starting, and we'll be hoping to see maybe upcoming runners, because that's our development side of running, because most of us who started road running, we don't know how much of the we went straight to the road, and we don't know how much that fits into the road running. And I mean, I've seen the likes of Eliud Kipchoge and Kenenisa Bekele. Those guys started at the track and field. They did track and cross countries, and they got to practice speed there. They got used to running the speed there, and they just took that and then into road running, and you can see how they have actually performed.
True of Stephen Mukoka and Elroy Galant here at home.
Yeah.
That's why they're performing so well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. Before we go, one last question for you.
Okay.
Who's winning Comrades? Who's winning Two Oceans?
Yeah. For me, down run, I would give it to the Tedijana.
Okay. Yeah.
Although there's extra 2-3 kilometers to the People's Park, I don't see the record going. The 5:13, I think, is too much to ask at the 89-90 kilometers, and then Gerda again on the ladies, especially. I mean, she's strong at both the up and the down. So I think I'll give it to those. So we should see Nedbank on the men's front, and then on the ladies, Hollywood. Yeah.
We look forward to it.
Yeah, but thank you, Mr. Mosibodi, for your time. And that brings to an end our conversation with Ntate Mosibodi Whitehead. He's a seasoned athlete and a sport commentator, so he knows a lot, man. I'm suckling from him, and I hope to learn a lot from him. And for you at home, hope you've enjoyed this conversation. And as a podcast, we love what we do and do what we love. We will see you in the next episode. Tango.